Russian President Putin, under the watchful eyes of Recep Erdogan and Ilham Aliyev, signed a capitulation. The events in Nagorno-Karabakh became a heavy defeat not only for Moscow's main ally, Armenia, but also for the Kremlin regime itself. This unpleasant but inevitable news cannot be drowned out by the nightingale-like trills of Russian propagandists about so-called peace. It is this so-called Russian peacekeeping contingent that will now bring peace to the Caucasus. By the way, it's hard to even call Russians peacekeepers with a straight face. The Russian Federation, which continues its aggressive actions against Ukraine, including the temporary occupation of Crimea, the city of Sevastopol, and certain areas of Donbass, has neither legal nor moral grounds to call its military units now deployed in the Nagorno-Karabakh region peacekeepers. The ongoing occupation by Russia of parts of Georgia's sovereign territory also calls into question the effectiveness of Russia's peacekeeping role in the South Caucasus region. The Russian Federation has never brought peace anywhere, although in this particular case, the Russians simply lost. The so-called peacekeeping contingent is just putting on a brave face in a losing situation. Putin was merely allowed to play at being a peacekeeper in order to create the illusion for Russian citizens that the Kremlin has everything under control. Although in reality, the agreement between Pashinyan, Aliyev, and Putin is a step toward Azerbaijan gaining full control over Nagorno-Karabakh and the expulsion of Armenians from the region. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan found the courage to tell the truth. The Armenian army was unprepared for Azerbaijan's attack and faced problems with mobilization, which apparently means that people were dodging the draft to the front lines. But Yerevan is Moscow's main ally. If Russian intelligence knew about the impending attack, then why didn't it share this information with Armenia? Moreover, why didn't Putin give Baku a hint? Like, we know everything, so we advise you to think carefully before going to war. It turns out that either Moscow committed an act of betrayal against Yerevan, or Russian intelligence, including electronic intelligence, is so incompetent that it simply cannot be trusted. The version circulating on social media that Putin made a deal with Aliyev to take revenge on Pashinyan for overthrowing Moscow's client Serge Sargsyan in 2018, in my view, is nonsense. But even if that's not the case, Moscow still looks bad here. It turns out that Putin, for the sake of personal revenge, knocked out the main ally under the Collective Security Treaty on whose territory, in a region crucial from Russia's perspective, a Russian military base is located. What happened is an absolute disgrace and a surrender of Russian national interests, especially if we proceed from the non-imperial Kremlin logic according to which the entire post-Soviet space is a zone of Russia's privileged interests, as the previous president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, put it with a touch of elegance after the seizure of Abkhazia and South Ossetia in 2008. Dmitry Medvedev, the previous president of Russia. After that August war, Russia undoubtedly regained its status as the main enforcer in the Caucasus, and indeed throughout the entire post-Soviet space. This title was further cemented in 2014 in Ukraine. But today, something is going wrong for the Russians. Maybe the economic sanctions have finally had an effect, or maybe it's the overall global situation plus the pandemic, or maybe the old man is just tired. But it all started in Syria, when Putin made concessions and halted the Syrian Iranian-Russian offensive in Idlib in September 2018. Russia backed down, and in response to Erdogan's threat, who warned that if Moscow didn't stop Damascus, he would start a war against Syria, Russia halted the offensive, afraid of Turkey's threats. Erdogan understood very clearly that Moscow could be challenged and that the Kremlin was no longer particularly willing to demonstrate strength in defending its national interests. And if it backs down in Syria, then perhaps it will back down in the Caucasus as well. And in September 2020, Recep Tayyip Erdogan decided to test his theory. And once again, he was right. Putin capitulated here as well. So to speak, he suffered a defeat on his own turf. Today's Russia is too weak to enter into an open war. And Aliyev and Erdogan demonstratively put Putin in his place. Assessing what is happening, any interested player, first and foremost Turkey and China, will conclude that in this very region it is now possible to wage and win wars without facing sanctions from Moscow. Another important conclusion for Russia's allies, especially those in the CSTO, the Collective Security Treaty Organization. An alliance with the Russians does not guarantee anyone protection from any troubles. But that's for those who still haven't figured it out yet, after what the Kremlin did to Ukraine in 2014. Moreover, much has also become clear about the much-praised modernization of the Russian armed forces, so often lauded by Sergei Shoigu and the TV channel Zvezda. The Armenian armed forces trained by the Russians. They were defeated by the armed forces of Azerbaijan, who were trained by the Turks and Israelis. In other words, a 20th century army lost to a 21st century army. Basically, there are no more illusions about the combat capability of the Russian military. None at all. It's simply laughable. Just take the recent incident of a mid-air collision during a training dogfight, for example. Two of Russia's newest fighter jets from so-called elite regiments of the Russian aerospace forces. This disgrace to Russian aviation will go down in world history. The Kremlin's geopolitical games have led to Erdogan's Turkey, with its authoritarian regime and global ambitions, a serious and lasting presence. It has come to the Caucasus, which until just yesterday Moscow considered almost its own backyard. Turkish influence was kept at bay by the Tsars, general secretaries, and even Yeltsin, whom die-hard Russian patriots always called a capitulator. The dreams of the Ottoman sultans have come true under Putin. On November 10th, Russia voluntarily submitted a statement renouncing its status as an influential power. The best confirmation of this? The note from the Azerbaijani Foreign Ministry regarding the downed Russian helicopter, written in the following style. Of course, we will pay compensation, but really, it was your own fault. The humble response from Sergei Lavrov's ministry: this is the best illustration that Russian diplomats only know how to be rude to Western democracies. November 10th will echo throughout the entire post-Soviet space. From Minsk to Bishkek, from Chisinau to Tbilisi, from Kiev to Tashkent. Or more precisely, in the space that until very recently was called post-Soviet. It no longer exists. There's no need to call Putin anymore, even for those who used to do so out of habit. I think soon even NATO can be contacted directly. And perhaps Ukraine now has a pretty good window of opportunity to attempt to liberate Crimea and Donbass from the Russian occupiers. But maybe, in this case, instead of NATO, it's better to aim for an alliance with Turkey